Good morning, guys. Wednesday morning, so I'm looking forward to our meeting tomorrow night. Just remind you that tomorrow night is your opportunity to practice the 30 to 60-second pitch or compelling introduction that we worked on last week. So I'm looking forward to that. In response to a couple of queries about this 3Ps model that I talk about in this week's module, I thought I would just go into a little bit more detail about that and do something a little silly nearly to help you maybe understand how you can use it more effectively. So before we get started, remember I've always said to you, using post-it notes to capture information is a really effective thing to do. It helps you just to crystallize your ideas and pull them together. However, sometimes you see only pink will work for me. So I use my pink pad to get some ideas down. And that's what I did this morning. I was thinking, okay, how can I best explain this? So this particular live is about alternate ways to think about those 3Ps. So what I'm going to be talking about today and teaching you is how you can use little snippets from your past to help you put stories together more easily before you start hitting those big business stories. Okay, so the one that I'm going to share with you today, I've given it a title called When the Chips Go Down, You Find Your Purpose. And to help illustrate this particular situation, I'm going to talk to you about my French O level in 1975. So, if we're going to look at the people, I have a choice of people that I can call upon to help me with this talk. So, the first one is my grandmother, Sarah Jane Keelty. She was a doer. She was a supporter. She wanted to make everything better for everybody. So that's the first one. The second person that I could talk about in this particular scenario is my Uncle Hugh. Now, in 1975, his wife had just left him and he was devastated. Now, remember what I said about my grandmother? She was a fixer, she was a doer, she tried to make things better for everybody. So that actually helps me with this story a little bit. The third person, and there always has to be the not very nice person in a story, think about your pantomime, it's behind you, is Mr. Fitzsimons, who's no longer on the planet. So there you go. Don't think he'd even remember this. But he was particularly horrible to me over this situation. Okay, so let's give it a go. If I'm talking about this particular situation, I'm going to pick on my Uncle Hugh. So are you sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin. Hugh's wife had up and left him for her boss, a much older man. And he was completely devastated because at this point, they'd only been married 5 years. He thought everything in the garden was rosy, had no idea anything was going wrong. So he moved back home. I could tell you so many stories about that. However, he was very depressed, very upset, and he just about managed to go out and do his work every day, but life was not good for Hugh. So I'm going to bring in another protagonist, my grandmother. She could see what was happening with her son, and she was very unhappy about this. So she thought, what one small thing could Hugh do that would actually give him a little lift? So then she thought about me. Now, I'm 8 years Hugh's junior, and we were always very close. So she thought, do you know, if Dawn and Hugh could go and do something together for a day, that would be fine. Why don't I let her take a day out of school and they can go shopping in Belfast? Seemed like a great idea. So that's actually what happened. I didn't go into school. we'll say it was a Wednesday for the sake of argument, and Hugh and I went to Belfast and we shopped until we dropped and had a nice lunch together, all that kind of stuff. Had a great time until we got home. There is Sarah Jane Kilty standing at the front door with a face like thunder. Why didn't you tell me that you had part of your French exam today? Wow. Well, I didn't know because I wasn't big on reading notice boards. Nobody had told me. But there you go. I'm leaving that little bit on a bit of a cliffhanger. Why didn't you tell me that you had a French exam today? We're not going to get on to my third protagonist just yet. Okay. But we are kind of going to think a little bit about purpose. Because you see, at that point, French was one of my good subjects. It was a subject I was predicted to get an A in, and I loved French. I always had a very purposeful way of doing my French because I loved it so much. And so, I used to read French books. I'd go to the library, get French books out, read them. I had a French pen pal back in the day when people had pen pals, and we used to write to each other quite prolifically. So the whole French thing was quite good. Anyway, let's continue with the story and how this situation helped me zone in on my purpose. The next day I went into school. The next day I had French in the timetable. My teacher, Miss Argue, was really, really very sweet. She knew how important French was to me, so she didn't make really that big a deal about me missing the oral and dictation part of the thing. We were sitting doing something, God, defining verbs maybe, and Mr. Fitzsimons, our head of foreign languages, comes belting into the room, stands front and center, and bellows at me. Now, I think he was expecting me to sort of burst into tears or be really apologetic or whatever, but he just wound me up. So he shouted and shouted and shouted and finished off with the words, "You will never pass your French O level." Now, I'm a bit of a stubborn so-and-so. So my initial reaction was, "Oh, yeah? You're like, how's that going to happen?" So off he went. Obviously, he felt a lot better because he had blown his stack and felt good about it. Anyway, neither here nor there. However, that did give me a purpose. I thought, I am going to prove that man wrong. So I redoubled my efforts at revision, reading the French books, sending letters to my French pen pal, anything I could do that would help me to actually get a decent result in this French O level. It was my passion. It's really interesting. I didn't take it much further than that, but it was one of those things that I was good at. And therefore, to have somebody turn around to me and say, "You can't do this," was just shocking. It's actually a shocking way to teach, if the truth be known, a shocking way to deliver that information. Anyway, I doubled down. As I said, the chips were down. I had a point to prove. And therefore, when I went in for my oral conversation with the examiner, I was well prepared. When I went in for my written exam, I was well prepared. Now, you may say to yourself, "So what did you get, Dawn?" I got a B. Happy for me. But you see, might I have got that B if Mr. Fitzsimons hadn't been so horrible to me? I might not have I might have worked on the assumption, well, I'm good at this, so I don't really have to work all that hard. But because he was so horrible, he was the protagonist that really pushed my purpose to help me get a result that equaled the passion that I had for the subject. Does that make it any easier? I hope it does. One of the things that you could do with these three Ps is you don't necessarily have to work with all of them in one talk. I mean, I've been talking for quite a while now, so you can tell you 5 to 7 minutes is well out the window. I could have talked about my uncle's situation and how that affected me personally. I could have talked about my mother's um, reaction to what was happening at home. I could focus on my grandmother because she's one of those people that just was very inspirational lady. I could have just decided to talk about my passion for the French language and how that actually developed through my years at school. I could have actually talked about the purpose that made me identify these are the things that I need to do to get the result that I want. I'm going to stop talking now because I have a feeling if I keep on going that I'm just going to confuse you even more. What I would say to you is if you're having a tricky time with these three Ps in terms of your business story, why not think of a situation that happened to you on a personal level and develop it like that so you can get used to telling stories. I'll record another one because I have a couple of funny stories from when I was a small child, and we'll see if you can pick out some of the things that I'm focusing on for the three Ps, or maybe some of the other models. Anyway, I look forward to seeing you tomorrow night. Hope you find this helpful, and hey, get out there and shine.